And some of the reasons that you say that here is because a lot of the material that you're bringing forth is taken from a lot of books, and you're a book collector as well
Correct.
as other things. You collect coins, currency, artifacts. So you have probably a very interesting book collection, I would imagine. There you find material that is not usually online, and if you do want to get those books, they're probably upward to $100.
Oh, I've got books that are several thousands of dollars, actually, and they're just impossible to get. A lot of the books. Now, I used to have like 2,500 books. I was talking to an old friend last night, and he was like, "Man, I was just so sad that you had to unload so many of those books." But you can't. I mean, 2,500 books. That's what. That's over 2 tons of weight to carry around. So, I mean, I sold as much as I could. You know, I sold books that I knew I would never read again, and books that I knew I would not have to reference to. And I did wise. I unloaded a lot of weight, and I still have, oh gosh, maybe 1,600 pounds of books. I didn't get out from underneath all of it, and I show a lot of the books that I have, the lion's share. I actually show in the video, which is called Harry Hubbard, the Real Past Preserver. I show different subjects, the books I have on different subjects. And I've been through some recent fires, and this is just what I have left over. I mean, it's what I got, what I have that I travel with out here in the middle of nowhere. So, but you can see those books in Harry Hubbard, the Real Past Preserver, stuff that I reference to quite often.
Well, getting back to the Bargos Islands, how many maps reference the same thing again and again for hundreds of years? Can you talk about that aspect?
I would say probably 60 or 70 for over, probably 150, 200 years. Yeah, and then there's just nothing beyond that. It's well documented.
Indeed, and I think that tells us a lot about what these cartographers and explorers had seen and what there was not necessarily an agenda to cover something up. And as you pointed out, the NASA images of the North Pole, I mean, I've seen them, and it's a black circle on the top.
Yeah. And it's not just one NASA photograph, it's several satellite shots.
But you mentioned before, if you look at certain maps, you can make out the 4 islands. Is that correct?
Yes. Even on those NASA maps, it's kind of vague, and they don't show up real good. But if you look real close, yeah, you can see them.
Now, going inside the inner Earth, you present in the video a map called Schlaraffenland.
Yes, Schlaraffenland. And let me say, as I do in the video, I present it as if there was an inner Earth, and is it possible that sailors had gone down in there, and is it possible that cartographers had mapped it? Is it possible? And then I show the Schlaraffenland map, which was published by George Suter in 1736. And George Suter's maps were very colorful, bold colors, and he had done a couple of fantasy maps, or just of imaginary places. So a lot of the cartographers and scientists at that time, they say, "Oh, well, that's just a fantasy map," and even the map collectors of today, "Oh, well, that's just a fantasy map." But if you look at his fantasy maps, they don't look anything like the Schlaraffenland. They don't have the detail in the legends of the distances that the Schlaraffenland map has. It's got 3 different measurements of distance. The map on the paper appears to be concave. The longitudinal lines start at 360 and then go 370, 380, 390, 400. They actually pick up, I believe, where the main Greenwich line would be, and then fold inside and then go out. And the equator is the same, but the map goes the direct opposite of what you would say from the outer surface of a spherical circle into an inversion. The map appears clearly to be inverted, which I found was pretty fascinating. There's no other map in the world that is written like that. This doesn't happen. It doesn't exist.
You referenced, too, the names of the regions on that map actually have a gradient from good to evil, and that reminded me of Dante's Inferno. But what is going on there? That was interesting.
Well, I don't know if George Suter put those in there or if they were on the original map. Now, you got to remember, there's a big story behind that Sharafanland map. He came to his shop one morning, and it was laying against the door. He didn't know who put it there. He didn't. Somebody dropped it off during the night. George Suter didn't know who had inscribed the map or anything, but he looked at it and he said, "Wow, this is pretty neat," and he put it out. Now, whether he at that time even suspected that it was of the inner world, there's nothing to indicate it, and because it doesn't say on the map, actually that, but it says, well, kind of in a way, the map isn't called the inner earth, but it talks about being down inside the earth to a degree, that there is an artificial sun that it keeps the place illuminated and warm, and then it talks about a machine that controls the weather. And I thought that was pretty significant. Talking about a machine that controls the weather in 1736. So there's a lot to that map and a lot of mystery that goes hand in hand with that map.
Our guest is Harry Hubbard. We're talking about the evidence on maps hundreds of years old that depict entrances to the Hollow Earth and Atlantis. We'll be right back after this break. If you just tuned in, we're speaking with Harry Hubbard about ancient maps depicting the Hollow Earth and Atlantis. Your colleague Paul Shafranki reads some of the notes of various explorers who have voyaged into the region of the Four Islands and Four Rivers. Some report that the northern lights make various sound, and the flora and fauna are striking. Let's hear these descriptions from the presentation titled Lazeria Map Collection.
This is a cutoff of the globe showing how they send S&P waves and how they travel through and how they determine the composition of the Earth. But these geography books also state that this is pure speculation and not fact. But they believe this to be the most accurate theory. This is what's presented in today's books. But, as we know, there has nobody actually been down there to describe the hot core and everything. That is purely speculative. Now, let me give you some actual accounts of Arctic explorers. This is a quote from Lieutenant Hooper, Royal Navy, in an expedition from 1849 to 1850. He says, "I've heard the aurora borealis, not once but many times, not faintly and indistinctly, but loudly and unmistakably, now from this quarter, now from that, now from one point on high, and another time from one low down. At first it seemed to resemble the sound of field ice, then it was like the sound of a watermill, and at last like the whirring of cannon shot heard from a short distance." Dr. Fridtjof Nansen, from his diary, Volume 2, page 472. Wednesday, March 25th. There is the same dark water sky behind the promontory in the southwest, stretching thence westwards, almost to the extreme west. It has been there all through this mild weather with southwesterly wind, from the very beginning of the month. There seems to be always open water there, for no sooner is the sky overcast than the reflection of water appears in that quarter. The explorer Kane writes in his diary, "As the surface of the glacier receded to the south, its face seemed unbroken with piles of earth and rock-stained rubbish, till far back in the interior it was hidden from me by the slope of a hill. Still beyond this, however, the white blink or glare of the sky above showed its continued extension." Another quote from Nansen. "So in the meantime, we made fast to a great ice block and prepared to clean the boiler and shift coals. We are lying in open water, with only a few large floes here and there, but I have a presentiment that this is our winter harbor. There's no reason why their progress should have stopped at that point." Another quote from Nansen. "This island we came to seemed to me to be one of the most lovely spots on the face of the earth. A beautiful flat beach, an old strand lined with shells, strewn above a narrow belt of clean water along shore, where snails and sea urchins were visible at the bottom, and amphipoda were swimming about. In the cliffs overhead were hundreds of screaming little auks, and beside us the snow bunting fluttered from stone to stone with their cheerful twitter. Here was life in fair land. We were no longer on the eternal drift ice. At the bottom of the sea, just beyond the beach, I could see whole forests of seaweed. Under the cliffs, here and there, were drifts of beautiful rose-colored snow. Another quote by Franklin. He saw large numbers of geese migrating to the unknown north at a high latitude indicating land there. He notes that no matter how far north the explorer goes, he always finds the polar bear ahead of him. No matter how far north these bears are met, they are always on their way north. At latitude 82, Kane found butterflies, bees, and flies, as well as wolves, foxes, bears, geese, ducks, waterfowls, and partridges. A strange fact all explorers observe is that animals do not migrate south to escape the cold Arctic winter, but instead go north. Nansen was puzzled by this driftwood, which is continually found along the Greenland coast. He said that as far north as latitude 86 degrees, he found such driftwood. Another account by Dr. Nansen on the occasion when the compass went haywire. "Taking everything into calculation, if I am to be perfectly honest, I think this is a wretched state of matters. We are now in about 80 degrees north latitude. In September, we were in 79 degrees. That is, let us say 1 degree for 5 months. If we go on at this rate, we shall be at the pole in 45 or say 50 months, and in 90 or 100 months at 80 degrees north latitude on the other side of it, with probably some prospect of getting out of the ice and home in a month or 2 more. At best, if things go on as they are going now, we shall be home in 8 years. Because of Dr. Nansen finding it getting warmer near the pole, and as well as his compass acting strange, he decided to turn around because he felt he was lost and went back home and ended his mission. Here is an account from another Nordic explorer. I lived near the Arctic Circle in Norway. One summer my friend and I made up our minds to take a boat trip together and go as far as we could into the North Country. So we put 1 month's food provisions in a small fishing boat, and with sail and also a good engine in our boat we set to sea. At the end of 1 month we had traveled far into the north, beyond the pole and into a strange new country. We were much astonished at the weather there. Warm, and at times at night it was almost too warm to sleep. Then we saw something so strange that we both were astonished. Ahead of the warm open sea, we were on what looked like a great mountain. Into that mountain at a certain point the ocean seemed to be emptying. Mystified, we continued in that direction and found ourselves sailing into a vast canyon leading into the interior of the earth. We kept sailing, and then we saw what surprised us, a sun shining inside the earth. These men eventually sailed into a land in the interior of the earth. They encountered many gigantic people and animals and a very advanced civilization. They spent their time there for a year before they returned back home. A Welshman, Walter Mapes, in the latter part of the 12th century, in his collection of anecdotes, tells of a prehistoric king of Britain named Herla, who met with the Skrælings, who took him beneath the earth. Many early legends tell of people going under the earth into a strange realm, staying there for a long period of time, and later returning. The ancient Irish had a legend of a land beyond the sea where the sun always shone and it was always summer weather. They even thought that some of their heroes had gone there and returned, after which they were never satisfied with their own country.
That was Paul Shafranki referring to various reports from explorers visiting the region near the opening at the North Pole from the presentation titled Lazeria Map Collection.